All right. Welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green, bringing you brand new interviews right here on YouTube every Monday and every Friday. Make sure you subscribe. Got to subscribe to find out about all the cool things that are coming out, and it supports the channel. Also, maybe you think you can ask better questions of the guests than I can. Maybe you want to watch the interviews 2 weeks before everybody else. Well, go to the link, the Patreon link in the description, and pick the appropriate tier. And next thing you know, you'll be asking the guests the questions. Speaking of guests, we've got a great one today from the band Leftover Crack. All my time doing this, I never thought I would get to say Leftover Crack, but I am today. He also has his own song. Rancid wrote a song in his name that appears on South Park. Not many people, if any, can say they have that honor. So he's promoting a brand new book. I was fortunate to read it. It's called Architects of Self-Destruction, The Oral History of Leftover Crack. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
Just wanna waste some time with you. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. Nobody out there can waste time without you.
All right, here we are. Let's welcome Brad Logan.
Hi, Jason.
Brad, I'm glad you're able to join me, and I'll tell you real quick how this came about. So every now and then I'll do a broadcast where I ask people to tell me, who do you want to see on the show? And so people knew that I was a fan of punk rock. I grew up in New York City, and a lot of people said Leftover Crack. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't know Leftover Crack. I'm a little ashamed. And so first I thought that this was a joke of some sort. And then I started asking my friends, who all said, oh my God, you have to have Leftover Crack on. And then I started to do my homework. And the reason I think I missed it is I left New York City in '99 as Leftover Crack is growing. I came to Las Vegas. I grew up on, New York City punk, the Heartbreakers, the Dead Boys, the Ramones, completely different scene. And so when I got involved with Rare Bird, who is the publisher of your book, and they offered me Leftover Crack. And who could turn down Leftover Crack? And I said, well, I want to read the book. And so I did. And I got to tell you, you get hooked right away. And I think the greatest testimony to the book is you don't have to know Leftover Crack. The book paints the picture so well. And if you're a fan of the band, it's perfect because you're going to get everything you want to know and more. I mean, and the book flows. It feels like someone's talking with you because you did interviews with all the people. It's not just one point of view. Everybody tells the story of this band that, to use the word dysfunctional, would be an understatement. For people who watch these rockumentaries and things, they have one idea of rock music and punk bands and dysfunction. But Leftover Crack is above and beyond. So you started in a band called F-, and you were the singer and guitar player for that band. And you were working for Hellcat Records, and that's where the book kicks off. This was Tim Armstrong's label. And you go to New York to meet Sturgeon, who is the singer for Leftover Crack. He goes by about 10 different names, I'm learning now.
Yes.
And he's this real New York character who lives in a squat house, and you find him in, Tompkins Square Park. There's all these New York things, and then it takes off from there. So you tell me a little bit about that history.
Hi, Jason. Thank you. What a great introduction. That was who can turn down Leftover Crack? That was, classic line. What was the question? Did you ask a question?
Well, you know what, Brad? Before I get to the question, I want to let's help out some people who might not be as familiar with Leftover Crack. Okay, so I'm going to read this. This is from the press release for the book, and I think this sums it up for people who might not know. Leftover Crack is a band of drug-abusing, dumpster-diving, cop-hating, queer-positive, pro-choice crust punks that successfully blend ska punk, pop, hip-hop, and death metal genres. They've been banned from clubs, states, and counties, and kicked off multiple record labels. They've received teen idol adoration and death threats from their fans. They've played benefits for a multitude of causes while leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. So the question was to tell me how Leftover Crack begins in your life. Because I'll be honest with you, Brad, and I don't know you that well. You seem a little normal in a crazy world.
Well, thank you. I'm clearly doing my job, holding up that facade. You know, I guess I came into it, you know, it's discussed in the book. I went through my own personal sort of, you know, missions on the underground, you know, in the late 80s and the early 90s. But, you know, it was removed from anything to do with, you know, I had distanced myself from music and from gigs and from all that, anything resembling, you know, any sort of, you know, normal life. And then when I came out of that, and finally got my shit together, I don't want to say rebuild my life, because I was, you know, I started to live, right. I didn't really, you know, I'd never had a life before. And part of that was just, you know, I had to get a job. Right. And I started getting jobs. I had friends, guys I used to go to punk shows with, or was in bands with, you know, who had been working at, you know, for some promoters around town and at some clubs around town. And you know, I started hitting them up for work. You know, I wasn't really, and they knew I wasn't qualified for anything, you know, except hanging out at gigs. And so that's basically what I started doing, was, you know, working production and, you know, stagehand or whatever, around LA. And I'm giving you the short story here. And
yeah, people could read the book for the long version. Yeah.
Yes. And through doing that, I met the you know, the crew of Rancid, and you know, worked a bunch of shows with them, and we got friendly. And then it was just as simple as one day I got a call. Hey, you know, they need a guitar tech. You want the gig, or would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, I know how to string guitars, you know, sure, I could do that, you know, and string guitars, I know how to do that. And so that's really how it started. And, you know, I didn't have a resume, or, you know, I didn't have any skills that, you know, I was just thrown into the mix and sink or swim style. And you know, I ended up stringing guitars and tuning guitars, and I got along with the guys in Rancid real well, you know, and you know, they were punks from the East Bay, and, you know, I was a punk from down south, and, you know, we had a lot of things in common, you know. So, you know, I toured with them for years and years. And then when Tim started his label, Hellcat, you know, he asked me if I wanted to work there too. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. I'd never worked at a label. I didn't even know what that meant, but it sounded like a great idea. So, you know, I kind of was just thrown into that as well.
You're talking about Rancid. I got to ask you the obvious question, which is this right here. Chef Aid. Rancid has a song called Brad Logan. And that song ends up in a South Park movie and on a soundtrack for Chef Aid. And the great Isaac Hayes is singing your praises.
Isn't that amazing? That is really the most mind-blowing thing about that is I remember when Tim asked me, he's like, hey, you know, South Park wants a song from us, and I'm going to give him Brad Logan. Are you okay with that? And I was like, yeah. Fucking kidding, you don't have to ask me. And so I got my hands on a copy of it, the CD or whatever, the CD single, and it's like, wait a minute, Isaac Hayes is singing backups on this. This is incredible. That was like, I've made something of my life. You know, yeah. There's a song about me with fucking Isaac Hayes singing backups, but you know, I mean, the song came about. It was like, you know, Tim and I would often spend, you know, we were the early risers in the crew. And, you know, when we were on tour and we get up and be having our coffee and, you know, shooting the shit, you know, early morning. And so, you know, he would ask me stuff about, you know, where I grew up and you know, what it was like when I was a, you know, punk kid and, you know, around where I lived. And so, you know, he wrote a song about it, and he, you know, he writes songs about a lot of his friends and a lot of people he knows. And you know, he's that kind of songwriter, writes about situations that have really happened, you know, and put in such a way that it's, you know, poetic and, you know, musically very catchy. And so, you know, I wasn't surprised that he wrote a song about me. I was honored because he's one of my favorite songwriters, and I think he's just brilliant, you know, but it wasn't surprising because I know he wrote about a lot of his friends and a lot of people he knew, and a lot of those early Rancid songs are about where he grew up, you know, and people he was running around with, you know. So it was really cool, and the fact that he titled it Brad Logan was just, you know, an arbitrary reason, really. It's just, you know, let's title it Brad Logan, yeah, that's how it came about. And there are two versions. There's a demo version where the South Park one is Laura singing, and there were demos for this record called Life Won't Wait that they did in the I think around 96, 97, and there's a demo version of Tim singing it, and they're both great, and they're both totally different. And I have both of them, actually. I wish Hellcat would put out a 7-inch, two-sided 7-inch of both versions, you know. But yeah, so I'm just you know, truly honored.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool sort of lifelong honor. I mean, the guy who sang Shaft is now singing the Brad Logan song. It doesn't get cooler. One
of my favorite songwriters writing a song about, you know, tales of my, you know, of my youth, and backup vocals by one of the, you know, I'd never got to meet Isaac Hayes, but, you know, one of the undeniable all-time greats, you know.
Yeah, so sure. So you're at Hellcat Records, and they're interested in Choking Victim.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. So I'm at Hellcat Records, and Tim goes, hey, you know, I want to sign this band called Choking Victim, and they're from New York City, and I met the singer a few times, but I don't really know how to get a hold of any of these guys. They live in the squats around the Lower East Side, and, you know, would you be into, you know, I'll buy you a ticket to New York and just go find these guys and you know, see if they'd be interested in doing a record, you know, kind of act on my behalf. And I was game for anything that consisted of a free trip to New York City, because, you know, it's like, say no more, you know, that's one of my favorite cities in the world. And you know, he had a phone number that was like on a crumpled piece of paper bag or some shit. And he's like, this is the singer's phone number. This is all I have, you know, this is your mission. Should you choose to accept it, good luck. And I did. I went out to New York, and I went to a phone booth, or you know, maybe I called from somebody's house, and I called that number. It turned out to be Sturgeon's mom's number, and she was like, "Well, he doesn't live here, but, you know, I can give him the message. He doesn't have a phone, you know." And so I got a call back at some point from Sturgeon, and told him what was, you know, why I was there and what was up, and, you know, he wasn't sure of, like, if I was just some weirdo or not, you know, and so I met him in front of, we agreed to meet in front of Coney Island High. Remember that place, Coney Island High?
Absolutely.
St. Mark's.
Yeah. St. Mark's place. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, meet me in front of Coney Island High at 3 PM on Tuesday, or what, you know, whatever day it was. And you know, I came walking down the street, and it was like, you know, unmistakable who the guy was. I had never met him. I had never seen him. And so that was that. I remember you know, I told him the deal, and, you know, what Hellcat was like, and it's a great label, and you guys should sign it. And I had heard some of their songs, Choking Victim songs, and, you know, we all thought they were great. You know, everybody at you know, Hellcat office, and when I say office, it was real loose, you know, and it talks about it in the book. It was loosely organized. You know what I mean? It was more like a, you know, a group of music fans, like, hanging out. You know, this wasn't like MBMA graduates and you know, business people. It was just, you know, everybody was, you know, music fan, right? And it come from music. Yeah,
you have the people who worked with you from the label. They all are in the book, and most of them don't know what the other person did, you know. So it says,
yeah. And so somehow I convinced him. I convinced these guys to talk to Hellcat because they were really suspicious of the whole thing. You know, they were from, you know, ABC No Rio, and they were from, you know, DIY venues and you know, in a narco punk underground, you know, that was pretty far removed from, you know, million selling records and you know, MTV and you know, music awards and shit like that. So, and by this time Epitaph had already had million selling artists, right? You know, the Offspring and stuff. So they were suspicious of it, but I linked up the two parties and they were able to work it out, you know, and come to an agreement. And then the next step was like, well, they didn't want to record it. Choking didn't want to record at a studio with a producer. They wanted to record it in the environment they were comfortable in, which was, you know, their own building. And so, you know, or Serenity Squat, which was across the street from C Squat on 9th and C. And so we did that. Mike Trujillo and I went out there. You know, Mike took some outboard recording gear and he didn't know why I was coming along. And I guess I was there just to, you know, to grease the fucking wheels or whatever. You know, I had a video camera with me and I was shooting just raw footage of them setting up and hanging out, you know, and so that's what we did. And you know, you can see where it went. That's where it picks up. That's where it starts off in the book, how that ended. It like on paper, it looked perfect. This is going to be great. You know, this is just going to be like so raw and so real. And this great record's going to come out of it that everybody's going to love. And you know, it just went off the rails. Right. But it still turned out a great record that everybody loved, you know?
absolutely. But Brad,
but there's definitely
do you relate to these guys, or do you think these guys are pretty insane?
well, I had come from where I came from, you know, was, you know, when I was, you know, I related to them because they were punks and B, because I never lived in a squat, but you know, I lived on the streets around, you know, Southern California for a number of years. And so, I mean, there was nothing shocking about their environment to me.
Right.
You know, I'd seen it, you know, living on the streets of SoCal and, you know, in the things I did, and the places I ran and the people I ran with around that period, you know, so there was nothing shocking about it, you know, at all. It was an environment that I was already comfortable in. And even though I didn't, you know, I didn't participate in you know, I didn't party and shit anymore, you know, but that was only a small part of it. Right. It was like the fact that they, you know, certain people did drugs or whatever, or, you know, drank excessively, that, you know, that was sort of just a small part of the overall thing. There was a lot more to be had from it. You know, the music and, you know, the messages and, you know, the politics and of that whole scene was, I thought, you know, very compelling, you know? So, I didn't hang out with those guys and party. I don't smoke. I don't drink, you know, I don't fuck around with any of that shit anymore. But, I didn't, you know, didn't offend me that they did, you know?
Right. Yeah. And you and Tim obviously saw an eye for talent that maybe some people would have missed.
Yeah, exactly. Especially Tim, man. Tim had this, like, just, you know, just this sort of like, you know, antenna in his head. Like, oh, this is, you know, this over here, this is great. People are going to love this, you know? And he would just dig these like diamonds out of the, you know, out of the rubble. And I think that's a lot of what, you know, the Hellcat roster was comprised of, was, you know, bands that were the least likely, you know, to gain any sort of attention, or, you know, that people weren't going to give a shit about at all, you know, and you know, you pull these bands out. Nope, this is the band I want to record. I want to put a record out from these guys, and even the Dropkick Murphys, who are like massive now, at the time he wanted to do a record with the Dropkick Murphys, they were like, playing to 50 people, in basement clubs. And so,
yeah, now they're like co-headlining tours together.
Yeah. Now they're co-headlining tours together, and, don't they, they play like Wrigley Stadium or whatever, I don't know what they're doing, but they're great. I'll see, footage of those guys, and I always love the Dropkicks, and I'm stoked for them, but they're on a, just this massive level now. Right. But who could have predicted, certainly
right.
When it was brought around Hellcat, people weren't just like, yes, this is fucking, everybody was kind of like, all right, well, if you say so, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was the same, with, I don't know about, my band, but, definitely with Choking Victim and Leftover Crack, and, the Slackers, and a lot of the bands, a lot of the bands.
Well, and Leftover Crack is authentic a band as you're going to find. You know what I mean? I don't think there's any, no one's going to call this a sellout band. As Choking Victim dissolves, Leftover Crack begins. It's all outlined in the book, sort of step by step from the people who are around it. And you then become a guitar player in Leftover Crack.
Right. Yeah. I guess if you wanted a real punk band, here's your real punk band, so authentic. They just, blow up their own record, on the day of recording it, and just don't give a fuck, and yeah, after that, I kind of went, everybody kind of went their own ways, and Sturgeon hit me up probably 2 years later, maybe a year later, and hey, I'm starting this new band, you want to play guitar in it? Here, I'm going to send you a tape of some of the songs I've been making, and that was that. I was like, sure, I loved his work with, I loved his work. I'm making it sound, I thought Choking Victim was fucking great. I got along with the guy, and I thought his songs were great. So I was like, yeah, it was game. It sounded cool. And again, it was as simple as that. He put a band together of people that he had worked with, in various, capacities throughout his life. So, here's the label guy. Here's a guy that was in Choking Victim. Here's the guy that recorded the record. Here's a friend of the guy. And just threw this band together, and nobody gave a shit about it. Nobody thought it was ever going to do anything, least of all us, and it was just something fun to do. And it just kind of took on a life of its own, but the songs were there, right? The songs were there.
Yeah. The songs are there, and obviously connected to the people who related to this band, and then wider and wider, because it is a big deal. And the people who love it, they really love it. And which we were talking a little bit, and we're jumping way ahead, but the Punk Rock Bowling Festival here in Las Vegas is coming up. And here it is, Leftover Crack is on this bill. And, this is a testimony to the staying power of this band. I mean, you couldn't have thought 20 years ago we'll be playing this major festival with all these other bands. It shows that people are passionate about this band. Yeah.
I know that there's no way any of us could have ever predicted anything like this. Up there right around Devo and Circle Jerks and Descendants and I don't know if the Descendants are on anymore. Are they still?
Okay, maybe it changed. This could be a little
old. Maybe they are. Excuse me if I'm out of the loop, but right. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a testimony that sometimes authentic works, and sometimes people really relate to something. The subject matter of the song is so much bigger than the image, even though it's not really an image. This is who you guys are. No topic is something that you would shy away from. Some of the titles are crazy, but punk music was always that way. but there's certain things that, you know, a radio is never going to play, and you know, venues are going to flip, and you know, Leftover Crack has all those things, and it's really interesting to see people's different memories of it. And then the picture of Sturgeon is really, it's an interesting one, because here is this guy who doesn't shower very often, dumpster dives, at least at the time, lives in this squat house. He goes out to California and he's squatting around Epitaph and whoever has couch, you know, to the point where they've got to put him in a $20, you know, hotel just to kind of keep him away from everybody else. Now he's older, obviously. Is it different? Can you get this guy on a plane?
Well, you know, I haven't seen him in a while. So he is out here, and he still lives in New York City. He's out here in Southern California right now. So he did make it over on a plane. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, things are different now. I mean, you know, he you know, to the best of my knowledge, he is a daily showerer. But you know, I think that, you know, there are a lot of bands and a lot of people that were living in around that area that were like, you know, just like that, right? And mm-hmm. and the difference was not all of them got signed to, you know, basically Epitaph was a major label at that period, you know.
Yeah, huge.
And so right, and so that was the rub, you know. It was like you know, it was like an 80s comedy or something. It's like, what happens when you take a guy from the squats in New York City and mix him with the largest independent label of its time? You know, the hijinks ensue. And that's,
yeah. Punk rock real world.
But yeah, right. Punk rock real world. And that's kind of what happened. You just had these two like opposite ends of the, you know, of the spectrum meeting. And you know, and so it was crazy, man. And there were fucking fireworks and you know, I'd like to think that the band progressed, you know. Again, though, you know, I felt that I always sort of maintained it. Maybe it was because I was older than these guys, you know. I was right. Like 10 years older than everybody in the band. And so I was kind of outside of it, almost just watching it from a you know, objective view from the outside, you know. And even though I was there since show one, you know, a lot of what these guys had passed through, I already passed through, you know. So yeah, it's quite amazing giving, you know, you read the book that, you know, that this is even together in any sort of, you know, that everybody's, you know, that anybody's still alive and that it's even together in any capacity is just truly amazing.
Yes.
For 22 fucking years now, you know.
As you read the book, if you didn't know the story, you would expect that this guy will be dead by the end. You know, most people who've lived that life, unfortunately, you know, you expect to hear this kind of tragic ending. Although I will say, Alec, your bass player, did pass away, I believe last year.
Last November, yeah.
Yeah, and so what happened with him?
You know, I mean, you know, he, you know, how do I put it? I mean, you know, the results aren't in from the coroner, you know. Mm-hmm. You know, everything's moving at a snail's pace, but it, you know, it hardly matters, you know. Yeah. I think, you know, I don't think it was natural causes. But you know, I know he was in a lot of pain, you know, for a lot of years. So, you know, I was deeply saddened by it because, you know, I love the guy, you know, like a brother, deeply saddened by it. But, you know, as we talk about in the book, you know, I'm not really surprised when anybody that lives like we do, you know, passes away in any capacity, you know. Actually, you know, I'm surprised when somebody dies of natural causes, right? And that's just like, oh man, they died of natural causes or fucking old age. That's mind blowing because the way that we lived, pre-band and during it, and in our personal lives is, we're all on a death wish, I mean, rock and roll is a fucking death wish in itself, I think is maybe what, part of what attracts, at least me, I can't speak for everybody, but, that's the attractive part of it, of rock and roll was like, oh, this is like, I don't know what else to do with my life, and there's this, and the same thing that has given me life and has saved my life is also capable of just totally destroying me, if that makes any sense. Do you know
I
what
think
mean?
it does. And if it was safe, everyone would do it.
Yes.
It's rock and roll music has always been dangerous. It's built on being dangerous. Punk rock music, especially, and punk rock also, more about expression. And so,
and I think it's historically, right? You look at rock and roll, and it's just like, this is what happens, and it's shocking when people live to an old age, or die of natural causes, because we're expected to. I didn't think I'd make it past. I lived to see 30. So, does that answer the question? Oh,
I think so.
You.
No, I think you answered it. So one of the things that comes up in the book, you talked about a little bit, is C Squat and Serenity and the different squats that people lived at. I'm not sure everyone watching this completely understands that people would live in a building in New York City, Lower East Side, and squats are all over the world, but and you would sort of take over this place. Now, you say yourself you didn't live there, but the guys did. And at some point after the Giuliani era of New York, the squatters owned the building. And I think those guys are still there to this day. Is that right?
Yes. I'm sorry, Jason, you kind of got the robot voice going. I don't know if it's on your end or my end, but I caught most of what you were saying. And yeah, Sturgeon still lives there at C Squat, and Ezra still lives there, who was the guitar player for a lot of years. And some of those early guys that were in Choking Victim lived there. And yeah, I mean, I think, everything's become legalized there, post Giuliani era. And I don't know, if there are any, squats, non-legal squats in New York City anymore, so the people that had been there for X amount of years now, like, it's turned into a co-op and they legally, own it. And some people are cool with that and some people are not cool with that,
Yeah, I mean, it's a bizarre concept.
Yes. There are some people that were of the mindset that they don't want it to be legalized. That's not what they were getting into when, they took over the building, and the point of it is, free living, so, but that's an argument that I have no dog in that, because, I've never lived, in one, and even though I spent a lot of time there, I understand a little bit about it, but, not fully.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that comes across in the book, and again, as you said, you were older and you have a different, a different background. I think one of the things that makes the book stand out so much is, and I said this in the introduction, is that you don't have to know the band to enjoy the book. And that, I think, is again, a testimony to a good story. It's not about how famous something is or how household it is, but is there a story? And in this book, there's lots of stories from lots of people telling them. And if you like a good rock and roll book, and people seem to love these biographies, there's a lot that this book offers a lot.
Thank you for saying that, Jason. That really, that's like, that's so nice to hear. And I think that, John and I wanted to construct a book that would tell, multiple tales. I mean, with any band that's been around, for a long time, it's not just the members of the band. I mean, you're connected to the lives of so many other people and settings and scenes, and we wanted to give voice to those scenes as well. The peripheral, the era, so we talked to the, Epitaph and Hellcat people and and also about the, the squats of the Lower East Side around that period, right? Which, that's long gone, and who knows? I mean, maybe coming up again soon, but that's kind of a bygone period, but important to the history of the city. And we just wanted to give, we're talking to people that are not talking about the band at all, but they are every bit as connected to the DNA of the band as the music and the members of the band, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You almost have to be a private detective, though, now, because you have to go find some of these people that you probably haven't spoke to in ages. And some of the characters that are in this story are, like you said, people who don't have phones or don't necessarily want to be found. And then you got to get them to do an interview. And I know that, some people you weren't able to do. I know the guys from Rancid did not want to be involved, right?
Yeah, there's still beef between I don't know if there's beef, but there's just like it talks about it in the book as well. There's some there's some not good feelings surrounding some things, so we asked and they politely declined, which is fine. And there were people that I definitely wished I could have talked to, that weren't in the book. But what can you do? I wanted to respect that they didn't want to talk. And there were plenty of other people to talk to and plenty of other stories to be told.
Yes, it's not missed. And there's people who worked with them who helped to tell that story as well. And, of course, you were very close with them. What I keep thinking when you hear people say, they have an issue with the way things went. When you sign a guy, in a band out of a squad house that is authentic, you're probably going to get some authentic results.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. And I'm sorry, what did you say?
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh, yeah, right. Shit's going to happen,
Yeah, I mean, to think that, hey, we're going to go find these guys. And and then we'll move to Beverly Hills, and obviously, things are going to happen.
And there was a lot, of their relationship that I wasn't privy to. I was only, this is only like a small slice, even though there's a lot in this book. It's just a small slice, right, of the big picture. And otherwise, the book would have, been multiple volumes, and probably just bored the shit out of everybody. But, they had their own relationship that I wasn't privy to. And I wish that, we could have talked to Jello too, and Jello's great, and some other people.
Were on Jello's. You guys were on Jello's label for a while. Did he not want to talk about it?
He didn't want to talk either. Yeah, which is okay. I have nothing but love for Jello.
Does he have some bad
feelings? I think that he might. I'm not sure, and I don't want to put words in his mouth.
Sure.
He may have just not wanted to participate. We're doing this book in the middle of the pandemic, so I think everybody was going through an emotional fucking roller coasters, right? A lot of people were.
Yeah.
So if anybody did not want to participate, I held it against nobody, I just find all of these people to be incredibly interesting and fascinating and love working with them all. And so I wanted to include as many people as possible,
Yeah, and there are some brand name people, Steve Albini, is in there and talks about his working with the band. I mean, this is
Oh yeah, Albini's great. Dick Lucas from the Subhumans, and there was yeah. I mean, that's another funny thing about that band is we've worked with people in the most decrepit DIY underground holes all over the world, and also like festivals like we're doing in PRB and Reading and Leeds Fest in the UK, and people like Albini, and it's just it's kind of miraculous, in that aspect.
Yeah, well, and again, testimony to the band: Tim Armstrong, Steve Albini,
Tim Armstrong, Steve Albini. Yes, yeah.
These people saw something in the band, as do all the fans who listen to it. And the fact that 20-something years later, you can play these really big festivals, which must be a lot nicer than packing the machetes and getting in the van with 3 working tires to go from gig to gig.
Yeah, and all those guys, they saw something in the band because they're all real deal people, and that's what they saw in the band, right? It was like the real deal meets the real deal, yeah. Well, we still had the tire iron in the van thing, I mean, that, I don't think that ever, stops happening to bands, but yeah, I mean, it's just it's been an honor, man. It's been an honor the whole way through, really.
Yeah, and it's great to see that it's still continuing, because as I said, people are passionate about it. I want to talk about some of the other things that you're up to, but first I just want to mention again, Architects of Self-Destruction, The Oral History of Leftover Crack. The book is available right now. Go to the description, click on it, you got yourself a book. It's a really fun book and easy book to read. I say that a lot about books because myself, I don't necessarily want to read. But when you got me going and it's people telling stories, there's a book about the Ramones written by their tour manager, Monty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, it's the best book about the Ramones because he has your style. He lets the other people tell the story. There's quotes and they tell the story. And that's how this book goes. And the next thing you know, you're a few pages in. And the next thing you know, you're done, and you're thinking to yourself, this is really an insane story. So I want to make sure, and again, the fans know it. They probably already have it. But for other people, I think if you're looking for a really interesting rock biography that you haven't read, I recommend this one. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about, you also play in one of the most legendary punk bands, the Adolescents. Steve Soto passed away a few years ago. And so now you are the bass player of the Adolescents, and you guys put a record out, I think in 2020?
Yeah. It was a covers record called Russian Spider Dump. And yeah, it was the first recording I was on with the band. And yeah, I think we finished it like the month that everything started getting shut down. But that's another honor to play with those guys, and with Tony and those other guys that have been in that that lineup with Steve and Tony for a lot of years. They were together.
Yeah.
So I mean that band was an integral part of my youth, right? The Adolescents, as it was for a lot of people. Soundtrack to my teenage years, man. So to be playing those songs is, fucking surreal.
And really, bass, really iconic bass lines. Obviously, Steve Soto was great. And so it must be a lot of fun to play those parts.
It is. And, unfortunately, nobody knew his, bass line. So, except Steve, and I had to they asked me if I wanted to do it, if I'd be interested in doing it. And, I was honored. I'm like, yeah, sure. What do you guys want to do? It's like, oh, well, we're leaving for Europe in 2 weeks. So, here's 40 songs. Good luck. We're going to rehearse, and rehearsing in 10 days. And it was like cramming for, to pass the bar or something. Right. And I would have to just listen to the songs over and over and, stop it here and listen to that part. And I still, I've been playing the songs for a few years now with those guys. And I'm not a bass player, right? Steve was a bassist. Steve was an all around, musician, but was an exceptional bassist. And I'm still learning his parts now. I'll listen to it over again. Oh shit. That's what he was doing,
Mhm.
So, it's a very sad situation, but, it's also been a lot of fun because I love the man, and I'm getting to learn his stuff and just have an even greater appreciation of him. Right. And I, I don't think I took his place. I'm just, holding the spot for him, right. Standing in, and it's his band,
Yeah, I completely understand that, but it is great for the fans, and that you have a history of your own, I think also helps to the fans. I mean, you live in, like you said, you Adolescents was a soundtrack to your youth as well. So
Yeah.
I think that, and so, I mean, I know right now plans for anything are kind of up in the air. Are there plans for Adolescents right now?
Yeah. We were going to do punk bowling, but had to drop off. There was some scheduling conflicts with Tony's a teacher, and I know that the school year has been like everything else, just a complete upheaval. So our show was on a weekday, and so we dropped off of that. But I'm going to be playing with Leftover Crack at Punk Bowling, and also roadieing for the Lunatics on their shows, who are old friends of mine that I met through roadieing with Rancid years ago. And then in the fall, around October, if all goes well, we have some Halloween shows that we're doing with the Circle Jerks and Negative Approach.
Yeah.
And then starting in the spring of next year, we have a bunch more shows with Circle Jerks, Negative Approach, and then going out to Europe in the summer. And that was a tour that has been moved a couple of times. So, hopefully it happens this time. And I've started a new band that I'm going to try and take out to the UK in January, called Instant Ruin. And that'll be more along the lines of what F- was doing. So we'll see how that goes. Again, we'll see if, everything's either going to be better or way worse. I don't think it'll be the same by January.
Definitely not the same. Let's hope not worse. But I mean, in some ways, it seems like that we're heading that way. One of the great things I find about this generation of YouTube and things is, yes, making money off records is a little bit more difficult because people can get anything. But I feel like it's a great time to discover music. I say that every episode because I went back and was checking out F-, and it was really great and something that I missed. And I think now it's so easy to discover music. I can put the new Adolescents record in the description, and like that, people can find new music. I'm interviewing Susie Quattro on Saturday, and I thought no one knows.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I think she's incredible. But for 10 or 20 years, I thought I would tell people, they go, "Who's that?" She was on Happy Days. They don't know. Yeah. But now all these young people go, "Oh, of course, she's the greatest of all time," and that is this new instant gratification technology. And there are so many young people going to punk rock bowling. There's so many young fans of the Adolescents and Leftover Crack. It's crazy that these bands just survive.
I have to agree with you, Jason. It's like, a lot of people bag on Spotify for good reason, but the upside is, you're right, that anybody can access the vaults of all this great stuff in an instant, and like, boom, there it is, and I certainly do my share of it too. It's like, oh wow, I had no idea that Alan Vega had all these solo albums, that I never even knew about, and or whatever, whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
But
that's
kids
a good
can learn
example.
about these, what's that?
I said that was a good example, though. That's the kind of thing I would fall into an Alan Vega rabbit hole.
Down a Alan Vega rabbit hole, yeah. And kids can access this stuff, and there's just so much great music out there. I mean, if they could just kind of work on adjusting.
Uh-oh. He got disconnected. There you go. He got disconnected. Let's see if he comes back.
Oh, it got cut off.
Mm-hmm. I think he knows just to hit the same link. Most people do. I mean, Gus was a little tricky, but I mean, we're sort of at the end. Did you listen to any of it?
Yeah, I listened to some of it. Yeah, I find it interesting with the, especially fucking squatters. They got co-ops for free in New York. That's
right?
Mind-boggling.
Crazy.
Mind-boggling. What the fuck? Free fucking condos.
It's insane. It's like dealing with the mob.
Yeah.
And if you listen to him, was funny that he said is that they almost didn't want it. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't. They'd rather have something that they don't, that they stole or what. I don't know.
No,
they didn't.
That would have been perfect. Because I know one guy that he was. I knew him through David Michael. He was the first assistant director, the first director. Anyway, he has a whole studio.
Brad, you back?
Yeah, my phone battery just totally died.
Okay, yeah, no, that happens a lot. As long as you knew to come back in. But we were talking about this instant gratification culture of Spotify and things.
Do you want me to pick up where I left off?
The last thing we said was we were talking about how you can go into a rabbit hole. You can start listening to Alan Vega records you didn't know existed, and just pick up right there.
And I think that's great, and I'm discovering new shit all the time, new bands and old bands, and there's a lot of great new bands out now as well, and so, maybe one day they'll adjust their payout, so, artists can get a bit more of a fair, shake out of it. And if not, musicians are just going to do what we've always done, which is just find ways of making it work, man, making a living and pulling together money to live, and because what drives us is, just the need to create, right? And the music is just a life-saving force, man, I think, so really in the end, that's what's important, is just the creation of the music. And,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, true musicians don't set out to make a record to say, okay, this is a hit. You make the music because you believe in it and you live it. And whatever happens after that, there's no way that Sturgeon thought when he was doing Choking Victim, this is it. I'll be playing, a festival to 20,000 people soon. Just
never. No, not at all. And it's always been a struggle. Historically, it's just, being in a band and being a musician is, it's a struggle, man. That's just what it is, And for some people are fortunate that they can get to a level where it's not, but that's not the majority,
So, Brad, I got to ask you about this. I saw this in your bio. It stood out to me. You and your wife own an occult pet accessory business. Is that right?
Absolutely. Called Hellhounds. Yes.
So tell me about that.
We make pendants for dogs and cats, or anything that that attach to the collar, and they're like amulets, and we also do bandanas that go on the collar itself, with various cult imagery. And, we just started it, about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years now. My concept of time is grossly distorted, probably 2 years now. And we're doing it slowly. We have an idea to roll out some more. We really like doing the pendants. which I think look really cool. Do you have animals? Do you have dogs or cats?
I have cats.
I can send you some stuff if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to. And I'd love to show it off on the channel too, so other people can see it as well.
Yes, please email me your address when we're done, and I'll send you some stuff to decorate your babies with. And you know, we're both you know, patrons of occult arts, so you know, and we love our animals. You know, our animals are our family, right?
100%. Yeah.
I don't even want to use the word animals. You know, we have 3 dogs and 2 cats, and you know, so it just started out as a fun thing to do for us. You know,
is there a website, Brad?
Yeah, we have an Etsy. That God, I can't remember the address.
That's okay. I'll find it and I'll put it in the description.
Yes, we have an Etsy store, Hellhound store.
Very cool. I think people would love this, and like you said, people like that fashion. Why not share it with their pets? You know.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, you should have that. You should have a booth at the punk rock bowling. I know it's a weird time, but somewhere down the road with that stuff, you'd probably sell out. People love it.
That's not a bad idea. I know.
When next go around, but I'm sure people would love it. You know, so
yeah, if touring really starts up again, you know, that's a good idea. I'll probably bring some of that stuff on tour, you know, and have it at the merch booth. You know? Yeah,
I think people would love it. And like I said, it seemed like such a cool idea, and you know that people love their pets. So
yes.
what a great crossover.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's just mention it one last time. Architects of Self-Destruction: The Oral History of Leftover Crack. It is available now. You go down to the description and check out this great book. Brad, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Jason, for having me. It was an honor and a pleasure.
Be safe, and hopefully we'll get to see a lot more of you on the road soon.
Definitely, you as well.
Okay, thank you.
If you come out today, want to come out, let me know, and you know, we can make it happen.
Yeah, sounds good, Brad. I appreciate it. Thank you.